peak in drones early in the spring. If you see that in your hives, that's a good sign. And you want to see them getting ready to swarm around May or in the beginning of spring of your swarm season. All right. So now we see there's a swarm season. Now I want you to take home is that drones come first, swarms come later. That's all well and good. All right, so now we'll move on to the next slide. Here we go. Now this looks like a jumbled mess, but I'm gonna try to make it clear for you, okay? So basically this is a colony that builds up in the spring, okay? So this is a colony that lives in a single hive body. So basically all this research comes from naturally nesting colonies. So these colonies aren't kept by human beings, they're not managed at all. So they're naturally nesting. And so they live in a small cavity, much smaller than what we would keep them in if we were managing. They stay in, basically they live in like a one hive body with maybe a small super on top. So that's about the size of the cavity they're going to live in. So they're going to swarm every year. Well, look at this. Look at this. They're going to swarm 87% of the time. So swarming is a very, very strong tendency in these colonies. And it's not a bad thing. I don't want you to think swarming is a bad thing. We sometimes see swarming as a bad thing. Oh, we failed as a beekeeper. Or, oh my gosh, my colony swarmed. That is just not the case. Bees see swarming as, oh, it's just time to swarm. It's time to reproduce at the colony level. It's time for one colony to become two colonies. And that's a good thing because it keeps the level of bees in your area at a good carrying capacity, basically. All right, now we're going to follow along this line. Now, every time a colony swarms, see 1%, this is a probability. So probability of 1 basically means 100%. So 100% of the time right here, when they swarm, they're going to take their mother, all right? So the prime swarm takes their mother. They're not left with a virgin queen. Who gets the virgin queen? Let's change color so it stands out. The virgin queen she inherits the original colony. Again, here's our probability. 100% of the time, virgin queen inherits the mother colony. So the swarm issues, the prime swarm issues, taken with it the mated mother, she leaves behind a virgin daughter to inherit that colony. Okay? Now some colonies will cast what they call after swarm. I'm going to change the color again. Let's do, how about we'll do yellow. Look at these two right here. These are after swarms. There are smaller swarms. If the colony is big enough, they'll send out these after swarms. The probability is 70% of one after swarm and about 60% for a second after swarm. So doesn't happen all the time. But if the colony is strong enough, they'll send out smaller swarms. And those smaller swarms will take with them also virgin queens. Okay? This is very important because check this out. The mother that departs with the swarm, let's go back to our red color. I want y'all to look very closely. This line here is her probability of surviving until the next year. Look, it's only a 23% chance of surviving the next year. And we'll talk later about why that is, okay? Now let's go over here to our virgin daughter who inherited the colony. Inherited the cavity, the hive that the original mother was living in. Let's follow this line. This line will tell us her survival probability. Check this out. It's way, way higher. Okay. We'll talk about why that is later in the lecture. Okay. But just, I want you to notice, the swarm leaves with their mother. They have a low probability of survival. The swarm left behind a virgin mother, and she has a very high probability of survival. Now these after swarms, let's change our color again to yellow so we keep the same system. Look at these after swarms. They have an even lower chance of surviving than the original mother swarm. And I'm not going to discuss after swarms too much, so if you have any questions about that, we can discuss it in the question section, okay? The take home here is colonies love to swarm. Look at it. They love it, and they want to do it. When they swarm, the swarm takes the mother, leaves behind a virgin mother in the colony they leave behind. So if your colony swarms, you can expect there to be a virgin mother in that colony. If you capture a swarm, you can expect that mother to already be mated, most likely, unless you capture one of these really small after swarms. But it's easy to tell an after swarm from a prime swarm. The prime swarm is going to be huge, half the size. They really take half of the personnel that was in the original colony. After swarms are much smaller, half the size again. So they're easy to distinguish which one you have. If you have a really big swarm, you got the prime swarm. If you find a really small swarm, you got an after swarm, and you look for that to have a virgin queen. All right, so let's move on. We're going to look at what happens to each. We're going to look at what happens to this daughter colony who inherited the mother colony, okay? So that's what we're going to look at next. Okay, oops, there we go. So we'll be talking about her right here. She inherited this original colony, okay? So she's a virgin, and this is what, remember, she has this high probability of survival, and we're going to discuss that in just a matter of moments. Okay, let's move on. All right, so the fate of the mother colony. They have challenges and they have benefits, and we're going to discuss both of those for both the swarm and the mother colony, okay? All right, so the first challenge is they have a virgin mother. That's a pretty big deal because you got to get, you need a mated mother. So that's our first challenge they have to overcome. She has to get mated. All right, now she can't do that immediately. Every bee needs 4 days before she can fly. I don't mean to fly through these clicks. Now, you feel free to take pictures or screenshots of any of my slides, okay? And Ms. Wissner is even recording these, so I don't know if they're available to you or how she runs that, but just, you know, check in with her if I'm going too fast or you want to write down notes and you're missing it. Just feel free to screenshot or take a picture of the screen with your camera, whatever you have to do. And in the question section, if you'd like, just ask me and I'll come back to a slide if you want to see it again, okay? All right, so let's move on. Okay, so you got that virgin mother. She has to get mated. But she can't, Max, stop it. That's my Great Dane, I'm sorry. She can't mate as soon as she emerges. She has to wait 4 days for her chitin to harden. So that allows her to be able to fly. And I don't want to get too technical or get too bogged down in insect physiology, but for most insects that fly, it's very important that the elasticity in their thorax be established. That allows them to fly, okay? So it takes 4 days for that to happen with the honeybee. So even though she emerges, she's going to need another 4 days before she can fly. When she does fly, she makes it very quick. She goes out there and she comes back within 30 minutes. She may make 2 or 3 of these flights, but they're very brief and they're very short. She goes out there, she finds places where drones are hanging out. She gets mated with as many drones as she can. And she wants to mate between 8 and 20 drones. And the more diversity she can bring back to her colony, the stronger that colony will ultimately be. So it's very important that she get out there, get mated with a lot of drones, and get back as soon as she can. Because it's risky. I mean, while she's out there, she could get eaten by a bird, she could get hit by a car. And this is very common. She could come back to the apiary. And let's say you got 20 colonies in one apiary, and they're all sitting on tables. They're all just a few inches apart, and they're all painted white. You could readily go into the wrong one and be destroyed by that colony that's in there. So it's risky. This getting mated is very risky. All right, and so she has to wait 4 days. She comes back as soon as she possibly can, about 4 days. And then she'll need about 18 hours after her final nuptial flight. Nuptial flight is just what we call her mating flight. She'll need 18 hours after that to smooth her sperm that she collected from her lateral oviducts into her spermatheca. That's just an organ that stores sperm and keeps it viable for many years. So it takes 18 hours to move the sperm from those 2 locations, and then she can start laying eggs. She'll start laying as soon as she can. Okay, let's see. Okay. All right, now check this out. If your colony swarms, I want you to check it, okay? Make sure that everything's going along like it has to. Check it every, once a week if you can, right after the swarm occurs. And you want to see, okay, you want to see them tearing down the queen cells. You want to see that queen, if you can find her, laying eggs. If you don't see her laying eggs 10 days after emergence, you need to intervene, because after that, she's not going to be able to get mated, okay? And so keep an eye on that. And so you can make several interventions, and to determine what interventions you can or should make, just review, just check out this list, okay? Let's say, all right, how can I intervene? What can I do to help her out here? So if you hit the 12-day mark, you don't see any eggs, you can just move some eggs, a frame of eggs from another hive into this hive. When those eggs hatch, the bees in this colony will choose larvae to raise into a queen. Or you can purchase a queen, they'll mail her to you in 24 hours. So, what you want to do is you want to look at these challenges and you want to say, okay, now how can I intervene? All right, they do have a couple of more challenges we're going to check out. They also have a diminished forager force, because half foragers went with that swarm. So they have a diminished forager force, and many of those foragers will be reverting back to jobs they have already done. to fill in the gaps of the missing personnel. Because when a swarm leaves, it takes bees of all age classes, okay? So it takes some of the nurse bees, it takes some of the house bees, it takes some of the forager bees. So a swarm leaves with an even distribution of age classes. Okay, so they're going to be a little low on foragers, and so you can help them with that by moving. Remember, like I said, if you want to know what interventions to make, look at these challenges. So you can help with this challenge simply by giving them a frame of capped brood. If you got it in some other hive, just give them a frame of capped brood. Just put it right in there. Those capped brood will emerge, and that will replace that nurse age class and push those bees that reverted back to nursing back to what they were originally meant to do. Okay, so but you don't have to do any of these things. If you look into your hive and everything seems to be good after the swarm, 12 days have passed and you see some eggs and you see pollen start to come back in, then okay, I don't need to do anything. Swarming is not a big deal. That's what Scott told me. So just, you don't have to do anything, but if you see a diminished population, you just feel like you got to do something, give them some pupa. If they have not made a mother, you're going to have to do something. That colony will perish because they don't have any eggs of their own. Okay. So if you see, they got no eggs after 12 days, all right, I got to do something. Give them eggs. Those eggs will hatch into larvae. They will make queens from that larva, or buy a queen, or get a queen from a local bee breeder. It'd be best if you can get your queens from as close to you as possible, because then you get genetics that are suited to your region. Okay. All right. Now we're flying through this thing. We check our time. Oh, excellent. We still got half an hour. Okay. Let's keep on going. Okay. They can result in reduction of resources. Yeah, right after the swarm occurs, because, they've lost half their foragers, and some naive foragers move into foraging a little younger than they would, you can see a reduction in the inflow of resources. But I have seen colonies that have swarmed that actually gain ground in their honey as they're getting their new queen mated and getting her to start laying again. So it's not necessarily going to happen. They're going to just not have any resources coming in. That's very rare. Okay. Others can revert to past duties. We've already discussed that. Wonderful. Okay, that's the end of this entire slide. I'm going to pause for just a few seconds. So if you want to screenshot it, you want to write anything down, or if you want to take a picture with your camera, whatever you want to do. All right. Let's give it about 5 seconds, then we'll move on. We're getting close to question time, so just hold your questions if you got any, and we'll get to those. All right. All right, I'm fixing to move on. And remember, if you didn't get written down what you needed, just ask me, and I'll revert back to a slide while I'm answering the question, okay? All right, so we'll move on. Now, this mother colony has some benefits, and we'll discuss those right now. First of all, they have a nest. Now, check this out. This is their biggest benefit. Because they have a nest, that accounts for this 81% chance of surviving that first winter. Because look at it. They've already got wax. They've already got comb. They've already got they got some brood left over by that original mother. They've already got honey. See, that's the important thing. They got that wax and they got that honey. And that allows them to be able to survive that winter. Because it takes between 8 and 13 pounds of honey to make 1 pound of wax. So that wax is a huge investment. In this colony, they inherited a nest. They inherited the hive. That investment's already been made for them. They have a very good chance of surviving. All right, let's see what else. They already have wax combs sealed, set up cavity. They already have stored honey. We discussed all that. Okay, excellent. All right, so that is the fate of the mother colony. That's their challenges and their benefits. Let's stop for questions right here. I'm gonna stop the share so I can see if you raise your hand, okay? Remember, if you don't have a microphone, you can type your question, okay? So I'm gonna stop the share. All right. Now, remember, if you click on participants, it'll at the bottom, a window will open on your right. At the bottom of that window, it will say raise hand, okay? And then right next to it, if you click on chat, another box will open, and that will show you, then you can type in your questions, okay? So I'm gonna peruse through, see if anyone raised their hand, because it'll show up on my screen as a little hand. Okay. Oh, there's a question. Okay, we have Calvin Fertig. Mr. Fertig, what is your question? Maybe you can type it if your mic's not working, but I can't hear you. There we go. He typed it. Okay. So I'm going to read it out loud in case anyone doesn't have when should I add my super? You mean during the swarming process? Give him a minute to type his front. So, okay, we got here. So what would we do if a wild bee population comes into our colonies? Okay, there's another question. No, sorry. Ignore me. Okay, so Mr. Ferdy wants me to ignore him, so I can certainly do that. But if I don't answer your question, just ask it again or formulate it in a different way so we can make it more clear. Okay, Mr. Ferdy, I don't want you out there. I don't want you to leave without your question being answered. Okay, so we'll go to, looks like Lehigh. I would say he says, so what would we do if a wild bee population moves to our colonies? Okay, if a wild bee population moves into your equipment, it won't move into your colony, because it won't try to occupy a cavity that another colony has occupied. Bees don't do that. But if they move into your empty equipment, you just inherited a hive. That's great. You got a free hive. You can move it wherever you want. Okay. So, if it's piled off to the left and you see a whole bunch of bees in there, you got your free hive. But I would suggest that you inspect it as soon as you realize that you have a free hive, and make sure they're laying eggs, okay? And then once they get cap brood, I want you to start monitoring for mites, okay? And we're going to discuss how to monitor for mites and about varroa mites next week. So come back and I'll talk to you about that. Okay, I'm going to scan for any more raised hands and then we'll move on. Okay, I don't see any. All right, I'm checking. If you have any questions, go ahead and type them in. Any questions about the fate of the mother colony? I'm not seeing any questions. Okay, I'm going to take you back to the shared screen, and we're going to look again at my PowerPoint, okay? So here we go. Sharing my screen, going to my swarm colony. Okay, now I'm going to make it big so we can all look at it. All right, now we're going to look at the fate of the swarm. Remember, the swarm colony is this one right here. Remember, they inherited. They got the mother left with the swarm, and they have a higher than the after swarm chance of survival, but not that great. Okay, that's the swarm we're going to talk about now. All right, so let's move on. All right, this is what the first thing they're going to do after they swarm. They're going to collect in a bivouac, and I'm going to show you all a video of a bivouac that occurred this year. Now I filmed this with my cell phone because it happened suddenly, and it was all I had on hand. So I'm going to apologize for the shakiness of the camera and the bad sound. I'm gonna try to share this video with you in such a way that you don't hear the sound, instead you hear my voice, okay? If that fails and you hear the sound, you don't hear me, I'm gonna let it play at first. It took 10 minutes from the gathering to a bivouac. I'm gonna let it play at first, then I'm gonna fast forward to the end so you can see how they build up real fast, and I'm gonna let it play in the very end so you can see how big they got, okay? All right, so hold on for this ride, and I'm gonna share the video with you, okay? So I'm gonna stop we're gonna stop the PowerPoint first. Now I'm going to share this video that I filmed of a colony. All right, so I'm not going to share the sound, and so I should be able to talk over it, and here we go. All right, can everybody see this picture of, it looks like a tongue of a trailer? Okay, no one panicked and said they can't, so I'm assuming that you can. Okay, thumbs up, thank you very much. Okay, here we go. I'm going to let it play for about a minute. And again, if you can hear the sound, I apologize for it, it's terrible. Okay. So here we go. They're collecting on the tongue of this trailer. This is a swarm. They're going to form what is called a bivouac, which just means temporary camp. All right? So there they are. They decided to collect here. Their mother landed, and they're going to collect around their mother. All right? I'm going to fast forward it because it takes 10 minutes, and we don't have 10 minutes to watch the whole thing. But watch look how they gather on that thing. Look how big this part has gotten. All right? We'll fast forward it again. We're getting way, look how big they are now. My goodness. Eventually, all these on the ground are going to move up. I don't think I filmed that, though. All right, we keep going, keep going, keep going. All right, this is pretty big. So this is what a bivouac looks like. And I notice there's less and less bees in the air now, too. So they collect, it takes about 10 minutes. It happens very fast, and they'll get into a really tight ball. And that's called a bivouac, which means temporary camp. But they're not idle while they sit in this temporary camp. They got things to do, which we're going to discuss right now. All right, I'm going to stop this video. I think. Yeah, there we go. All right, I'm going to go back to screen share. I'm going to go back to our PowerPoint, okay? Hang on. Here we go. Screen share. Back to our PowerPoint. Okay, is everybody still with me? Lehigh, you give me a thumbs up. You can hear me? There we go. Okay, thanks. You're just top of the list. That's why I keep calling on you. Okay, this is what the bivouac looks like. Now, this looks like an after swarm bivouac to me. Don't you think? It's kind of small compared to the one that I filmed, which was definitely a prime swarm. Okay, let's move on. All right. Now, like I said, they're not idle. Now, check this out. While they're in that bivouac, they send out scouts to find all the cavities that are available in their area because they got to find a new cavity to move into. All right, so let's look at this chart here. It's not hard to understand. The Y line, let me, right here, the Y is number of dances, okay? So scout bee goes out, she finds a good site, and she comes back and she dances that location, just like she would dance to communicate the location of a good food source, okay? We have an excellent site, and we have a mediocre site, okay? So this is number of dance circuits. This is number of times that she danced. Look here, number of times she danced. Look, first of all, the big comparison. She only danced twice for a mediocre site. She danced 6 times for an excellent site. These are 2 different bees, by the way, 2 different bees. All right, so they'll go out and they'll find the excellent site. She'll come back and she'll dance for it. Now, notice she quits dancing eventually. Even if it's a great site, she's going to eventually quit dancing. But because she danced so much, so many times, she attracted the next round of scouts to go check out her site. Okay, because look, all these dances attracted a whole bunch of the next round of scouts to go look at her site and see if it is the best site. Now, she only danced twice. She only went back to the site to check it out twice. So she attracted very few of the next round of scouts. And so this site sort of just fell off. No good. But this site kept being passed on to the next round of scouts, to the next round of the scouts, to the next round of scouts. And that's how they reach a consensus. They won't leave until they reach a consensus. In the next slide, we're going to look at that, how that looks while it's happening. Okay, so now we understand how they communicate. We understand the more vigorous they dance, the more often they dance, the longer they dance, they're going to attract more scouts to the next round. And so that's going to make that site stay popular. And once all the scouts are dancing for the same site, they'll head to that new site, okay? All right, so this looks confusing, but it's really not. It's 3 days. It's June 19th, June 20th. This is June 20th. Continuing, this is June 21st. June 21st is when they left. So they won't stay in that bivouac. 24 hours is usually how long they stay. So if you get a call for a swarm, or when I get calls for swarm, the first thing I ask, how long they've been there? If they stay a day or 2, I say, well, they'll be gone tomorrow. But if they say they just arrived, I say, good, I'll come and get them. Because, it's a free hive. Okay, so 3 days they're in bivouac. Now check this out. Before they left the hive, they filled their bellies full of honey. And believe it or not, 50% of the weight of that bivouac, of that swarm, is honey. And they can stay, and because it gets cold at night. They got to use that honey to keep themselves warm. They got to use that honey to fuel all the searches for these new locations. So they took some honey with them, and they can stay out there for up to 6 days before they starve to death. Okay, but they usually get it done in 3 days, as you see here. All right, so let's check this out. They swarmed June the 19th. All right, immediately two scouts found a site, A and B, and they went. It's only, the thickness of the line indicates how many bees are dancing for it, okay? And then the direction of the arrow indicates the direction of the site that they're dancing for, all right? But by 3 o'clock, look, A and B are gone. No one's dancing for it. They weren't that great. But we got about 2 or 3 bees dancing for E. We got 1 for F, 1 for D, and 1 for C, okay? So E is starting to come on. However, between the 5 and 7 time bracket, the next round of scouts, all these have fallen off except for D, and they've added a G. Okay, so they just keep looking. They keep weeding out the ones that aren't any good. Now, the next day, it rains later on this day, which we'll discuss right about here. The next day, G is still popular and getting way more popular. H is newly discovered. It's kind of popular, and I is kind of popular. These others will fall off. All right, the next round of scouts, the next time bracket between 12 and 2, we just have J and K is left. K used to be popular. Look here. But now it's down to 1 bee dancing for her. J's never been that popular. How it held on, I do not know. But Jay's still holding on right here. But look how big I has gotten, man. They love I. Everybody seems to be dancing for I. The line's going to get thicker and thicker except right here. Right here it rained. Hardly anybody was dancing. But the line kept getting thicker and thicker. They kept looking for sites. But eventually, everybody's dancing for I except for this one lone bee who's dancing for L. But everyone else is dancing for I. And when that happens, bam, they all lift off and head for that cavity. So that is, it's like they're voting. They're voting by dancing. And And they express how good the site is by how much they dance per dance and how often they dance, how many times they will keep dancing. Okay. So that's how they decide where they're going to live. Now, once they decide where they're going to live, they head for that cavity, and then they got to get busy. All right, now we're going to discuss the benefits and the challenges that the swarm is going to face. Okay, so the challenges the swarm faces. Okay, they have to find the new cavity, and we just discussed that. They get that done in the first 2 days or 3 days at the most. So they found that new cavity as soon as they can. And even if they have to find a mediocre cavity, they will move into it. But they know, all right, we got to get into a protected space where we can start making this honey. Okay? And that's their biggest challenge after that. They have to make the wax infrastructure to store the honey. Okay? And that accounts for this low survival probability. Remember, I told you when we were discussing the fate of the mother colony that they have got to, it takes 8 to 13 pounds of honey to make 1 pound of wax. And that huge investment is what causes them not to survive the winter. Because they're spending all of the honey and all the nectar and the honey they're bringing in, they're spending that to make the wax instead of storing it. And that accounts for their low survival probability. So their biggest challenge is to make that wax. And if you capture a swarm, you can help them along the way. Remember, you just check these challenges and you see, what can I do to help with these challenges? Well, what you can do with that, you can give them a lot of sugar water. Okay. If they moved into your equipment or you caught a swarm and they're on bare frame with undrawn wax, give them a lot of sugar water so they can make that wax. Or give them frames that already have wax from other colonies, from equipment you're not using. Either way, just check out these challenges and then pick how you can overcome those challenges. You help them overcome those challenges. Okay, now let's talk about the benefits. So they do have some benefits. All right. Now, their biggest benefit is they have a mother and she's already mated. So as soon as they have cells, she'll start laying those eggs. And so she can get that colony population to really grow really fast. And that's good so they can take advantage of the honey crop that's out there. They got to have a big population to take advantage of honey crop to build that wax, to store the honey so they can survive that first winter. Okay, so we got 15 minutes to go. So I'm going to go through what causes swarming, and I'm going to go through how you can reduce swarming, and then we'll answer questions at the end, okay? So hold your questions about the fate of the swarm colony until the end, okay? So what causes swarming? So if we understand the cause, we might be able to do something about, lessening the probability of them swarming, okay? So what causes swarming? Was quite simple, actually. Swarming is density dependent. That's just a fancy scientific way of saying they swarm because the colony gets full of folks. Why would that cause swarming? Well, it's simple also. The more full it is, the harder it is for the bees to move. And believe it or not, the queen's inhibitory pheromones are distributed by bee-to-bee contact. So the queen has inhibitory pheromones that prevent the building of queen cells, okay? Now, when the colony gets congested and no one can move, her pheromones aren't distributed throughout the colony. Thus, they're not inhibited from building queen cells. They're not inhibited from building queen cells. And building queen cells is the first step to swarming. And so a packed colony reduces the distribution of her inhibitory pheromones, which causes building of queen cells, which is the first step in swarming. Okay, so now that we know the cause, we should be able to address that problem, right? So how can a swarming tendency be reduced? Actually, let me go back. Let me go back to the slide and I'll pause here for a minute, let you take pictures or take a screenshot, whatever you want to do, take your notes, and we'll come back and after a few seconds, we'll move on. We're almost done with this lecture and we'll have about 10 minutes left for questions. I'm sorry I talk really fast. I get excited about bees. Okay. All right, so everybody got your picture, got your notes. And remember, you can request in the question and answer section for me to go back to a slide, and I'll be glad to go back to it. Okay, so how can we reduce the swarming tendency? I'm not going to tell you we can prevent swarming because, no matter what you do, 20% of those colonies are going to swarm no matter what, because that's how strong the swarming tendency is. But we can do some things to reduce the swarming tendency, and it's quite simple. Okay, so if density is our problem, all we have to do is make the colony less dense by making it bigger. Okay, it's simple. I call it the May rule because swarming occurs in Montana in May. In your area, it might be a June rule or an April rule. And for those people who live in the Southern Hemisphere, it's a November rule. But the point is, when give them another hive body during the onset of swarm season in your area. So for me, the May rule, on May the 1st, I add another hive body to any hive that has a colony in it. Even if they don't need it, I add another hive body. I can take it away later if they don't fill it. But that reduces, that makes the inside cavity bigger. That reduces, that gives them plenty of room to spread out, which reduces density. So it's fairly easy to prevent swarming. You just give them another hive body. If, end of your swarm season, they have not moved in that hive body, or they're not using it for anything, take it away. Or you can let them have it, whatever you want to do. But to prevent swarming, you simply follow the May rule. Give them another hive body, give them extra room. That prevents the congestion, that allows the distribution of the queen's pheromones, that prevents them from making swarm cells. Okay, I think that may be the end. Now, let's stop here for questions. Okay, so I'm gonna leave it up. I'm gonna leave this, let's stop here for questions while I answer questions. Let's go to participants. Actually, I'm gonna back out of this. I'm gonna make this slideshow go away. Oh, Charles has raised his hand. Excellent. Mr. Welch, what is your question? If you type it, let me see what I can get here. I'm gonna stop the screen share. I'm gonna go back. That way I can look at the chat. Okay. So there's the chat. All right, I can scan for hands raised. All right. So Mr. Welch, are you gonna use a camera, or are you gonna write a question? I mean, use your mic, or are you gonna type a question? Okay, I don't see. This is excellent. This is excellent. Thank you, Lisa. Okay, so I'm going to scroll up the chat. I'm going to hit some of these questions I missed. Okay, here we go. Do hives swarm in their first year from nukes or packages? They can. If you have a very good year, once you put them in their package and you get a good flow of nectar coming in. I got that going on one of my sites right now. I got some packages I installed that may very well swarm. So it can happen. If you got to have a good year, it's easy. Just watch them when you put them in there, just to check and make sure. You've been checking them anyway to make sure that she's laying and everything's going good. So just when they get, if they feel 8 frames, this is a 10-frame colony, a hive, I'm sorry. If they feel 8 frames of a 10-frame hive, go ahead and apply the May rule. Give them extra room. That will reduce the swarming tendency. All right, I'm moving on to Lisa. Dumb question. There are no dumb questions, Lisa. How did you monitor these bees, or is this an example of real data? This is all real data. If you're asking about how were the dance language interpreted on the bivouacs, I didn't do that research. That's from Professor Tom Seeley. He made artificial swarms. Basically, he just took colonies out of their hive and shook them onto a board, put their queen in a cage, okay? So they're stuck there. And then he watched them as they tried to find a new home. And then he released the queen so they could go. And so he counted the dances and he interpreted the dance. The dance is easy to interpret. I don't think we have time to do that, but you can find his work online, and he has a YouTube channel even. So he discusses many of those things there. All right, so let's move past Lisa. If you have any follow-up questions, like Lisa or Nestle, go ahead and just type them in there, and I'll just get to them as we go, okay? At what point with the virgin queen hive, I'll read the question before I answer it, okay? This is Chris. At what point with the virgin queen hive and the virgin queen is not laying, do you bring in a new queen, and how do you protect her? Good question. Okay, so you got that mother colony, and they left that virgin behind. You check it 10, 12 days later. You see no eggs, and you say, oh, my queen got killed while she was out getting mated. She got ate by a bird. What do you do? So right at around, you gotta respond within 10 to 15, day 10 to day 15. So check between day 10 and day 15, see if you have any eggs. If you ain't got no eggs, get you a queen from somewhere. I'm assuming you're gonna buy a queen or get a queen from a neighbor. Make sure she's in a cage. Put that queen in the colony, still in the cage. Make sure that you give her. I don't want you to put the candy in so they can chew her out. I want her to live in there for 2 days. Okay? Then take her queen cage out, remove the cork, and put the candy in. or you can use a marshmallow, anything, and then stick her back in, and then they'll chew her out. I want you to give her those 2 days so they can get to know her and accept her as their queen. And then you can let her out. Okay? Excellent. All right, so we're moving on down the list. We have Lisa Boson. She said, this is excellent. Thank you very much, Ms. Boson. It's kind of you to say. All right, then we have Lehigh again. Hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Thank you for all the thumbs up. Let me know everybody can hear me. Okay, he says, queen rearing question mark. I'm sorry, haha, after swarms. Okay. I got to go back and see what you're asking. I'm going to go back a little bit, see if I can figure out. So what would we do if a wild population comes into our colony? So you want to know if an after swarm moves into your colony? I'm going to answer is if that's what you're asking. If that's not what you're asking, go ahead and type another question to clear it up. Okay. So if the after swarm moves into your equipment, again, you got yourself a free colony. But remember the challenges of a colony that doesn't have a mated mother. So an after swarm has the challenge of needing to build they need to invest in all that wax, and they have the added challenge of getting their mother mated. Okay. So that's why their survival probability is only 21%. They got to get their mother mated, and they still have to overcome the lack of wax. And so let's say an after swarm moves into your equipment, and you see, okay, my swarm moved into my equipment, but there's a virgin queen in here. Just give her the 10 days like you normally would. You know, go 10 days from when you notice they moved in, and check and see if you have eggs. If you don't have any eggs, she got eaten, or she got hurt, or, you know, who knows what happened, but she didn't make it back, and she's not laying eggs, so it's not good. If after 10 days you don't see any eggs in that swarm that captured the after hive, you gotta give that colony a frame of eggs so they can raise their own mother when those eggs hatch into larvae, or get a queen from a queen provider and follow the steps that I already provided. Okay, so we'll move down. And again, if that was not your question, please just retype a clarifying question. Okay, this is from Charles Welch. Oh, there he is, Mr. Welch. If you are adding a hive body, does it have to contain drawn comb, or will foundation do? Foundation will do. All you're doing is giving them room to expand so there's no congestion. No problem. All right, let's see here. Mr. Fertig, did you already cover how to catch a swarm? I did not. I have a video on that, but I don't think we have time. How about at the end of this whole thing, I'll play a video, and those of you who want to go eat supper or have things to do, other appointments, you can just leave. My feelings won't be hurt at all, but I'll let that video play. Deal? Thumbs up? Okay. All right. No, not at all. No, all good. Okay. Let's see here. We got Sadie Valdez. How does temperature play into a swarm happening? From like 80 degrees to 30 back to 80 a couple of days later. The temperature inside the colony will remain fairly stable even through this entire process, because my dog's starting to bark. Because even though a swarm has left, brood is still in that colony. Okay, and brood has to be kept in a specific temperature zone in the high 90s. Okay, so even though the colony left, they left brood behind, and so the colony that's left behind will still keep that brood in a higher temperature. Now, Max, that's enough. Max, stop. Now you can't stop it. So he saw a dog outside. Now, the moment that the swarm happens, you can see a drop in temperature, because many times everybody will leave, but half of them will come back. So that's why you see bearding a lot of the times on the outside of colonies. Okay, but temperature is not unless you can see real-time temperature is not a real good indicator of swarming. Okay, unless you're monitoring it in real time and happen to be staring at that monitor right before or as it is happening. I missed the queen rearing part. I did not discuss queen rearing. All I discussed was swarming. If the virgin queen is still in the hive but not mated, will she kill an introduced queen? If you put an introduced queen in there and the introduced queen is mated, the colony will most likely kill any other unmated queen in that colony. Or they will cast out an after swarm if they have the population to do so. Okay? All right, let's keep on going. Got a lot of questions here. Would you be able to share sometime how to catch wild swarms? Yeah, I'll show a video. Well, there's a lot of ways to capture wild swarms. The video I'm going to show at the end of the lecture, which again, you can leave if you want. My feelings will not be hurt because I know it's going over and that is not cool. There are a lot of ways to capture wild swarms. You can capture swarms. It's fairly simple. Or you can bait swarms into your hive, into your equipment. And as another video, but I don't want to keep tacking on videos. Maybe we can discuss that next week. I may have tacked that on in next week. I don't know. And I'm not trying to shamelessly advertise my course, but all of these techniques are discussed in the program at University of Montana. So if you're interested in some more in-depth understanding than what I have time to give you in this 45 minutes, you can feel free to enroll in the course. It's great. Covers everything you need to know. Do advertise your course. Okay. Well, if you're interested in my course, you just got to go to UMT. Wait, I'm going to screen share. I'm going to screen share a whiteboard, I think. I can't find the whiteboard. I guess I won't screen share a whiteboard. Okay, I'm going to have to just say it, okay? So it's umt.edu. So it's University of Montana, umt.edu/B, B-E-E. And that will lead you to, oh, here, I can do it. I can screen share and just show y'all. All right, so I'll go to the course. How about that? All right, so I'm going to screen share my screen. Let me find it. There it is. And you're going to see the web page. So here's the web page. If you go to, let me back up a little bit. If you go to wait a second. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, if you go to umt.edu/B, it'll bring you right here. Query press not found. That's embarrassing. Come on. Still not good. Oh, I see what I did wrong. umt.edu/BEE. Enter. There we go. And you'll see everything you need to know about the program. We have 3 levels, apprentice, journeyman, and master. And we even offer a natural beekeeping course, which helps you teach you how to keep bees more closely matches the natural way to keep bees. Oh, that's the end of our time. It also, you can sign up. And I recommend getting on the waiting list. So these classes feel very fast. But if you're on the waiting list, you will get an email notification and can get into these courses. Okay? So I'm going to exit out of share screen so I can go back to the questions. Okay. Let me see. Any more questions? I have to leave, but great presentation. As always, thank you. Thank you. Okay. That was private. All right. So that's the end of our time together. I had a great time. Those are great questions. I hope I didn't go too fast. I hate it, thank you for the applause. Remember, I'm going to play the video on how to capture a swarm. And I will share the sound so you can hear it and I won't have to talk over it. And then after that video plays, it's only like, I think it's 5 minutes. After that video plays, I'll come back and I'll say goodbye. Okay, here we go. I'm going to share screen again. We're going to go to the how to capture a swarm video. Let's go here. We'll share sound and optimize the clip right there. Okay, here we go. All right. Calling dynamics. And this is a look at the course. I wonder if y'all can still hear me. All right. A bunch of lectures. Basically, these lectures are what I just told you. Okay. So, capturing a swarm. There we go. Well, I hope y'all can hear it.
Today we'll discuss the swarming phenomenon. There will be a brief lecture and then a video of me actually catching a swarm. It'll be helpful to you. Capturing a swarm is fairly easy, but before you even approach the ball of bees, known as a bivouac, you must prepare your hive. When preparing the hive, you will need a single hive body, a bottom board, and a cover. Inside this hive body, you will have 10 frames, making certain that at least one of those 10 frames is fully drawn wax, and another of those 10 frames is full of honey. Once you have your hive body with the wax and the honey, you've created a home they would like to live in. So getting them to move into this box is fairly easy. Shown here is the bivouac. You can approach the bivouac fairly leisurely. They are not aggressive at this stage of the swarming process. As you can see here, I'm not wearing a suit, nor are any of the students that are nearby. The first thing you'll have to do is lift the hive body till it makes contact with the bivouac. As you can see here, I needed to pull the limb down a bit so that the bees could make contact with the hive body. Once the bivouac has made contact with the hive, they will start to move in, sensing the honey and the wax. Once you get a large majority of the bivouac moving into the hive body, you can then cut the limb gently. If you do this gently enough, it won't even affect their moving into the box. Finally, once the limb is cut and the bees are still moving into the box, all you have to do is put a lid on the bivouac. This will force the rest of them down into the hive body. Now that you understand the swarming phenomenon and have seen me.
Okay, that's it's one of the videos from the course, and that's how you capture a swarm. You basically you make a home they want to live in. Remember, I addressed their challenges. I gave them honey and I gave them wax. So I addressed their challenges. So once they realize that's in there, they're like, oh, we need that. They're trying to overcome that 23% chance of survival. So they just move right in. Now, this is just take the concept and apply it to your situation, because these bivouacs are going to be all over the place. So just take the general concepts of this method and apply it to your situation. Okay. Well, I will see y'all next week, and we will discuss varroa mite monitoring and treatments, and we'll even go over the life cycle of varroa mite. Thank you so much for joining. You've been a great crowd.
Scott, thank you very much, and look forward to seeing you next week. And
Yeah.
I will have a Zoom invite on our Facebook page on the University of Wyoming Laramie County Extension Facebook page. And so if you just go there, and of course I'll send out a group email again for everybody. So you'll have plenty of opportunities, or you can email me at cwissner, W-I-S-S-N-E-R, at uwyo.edu, and I will send you the Zoom information. But Scott, wonderful lecture. I enjoyed it, learned a lot. Makes
Thank
me
you.
want to
Thank you
run
very
out and
much.
check my bees right now.
Great. I will see all y'all next week.
Okay, everybody. Thank you.